while I was resting. Welcome to this week's episode of While I Was Resting, the podcast in which we chat to actors, performers, musicians, writers, artists, whatever, people who do creative stuff, about this stuff they do in between some of the jobs of the chosen profession, okay? And today I'm very excited because we've got a TV legend, nonetheless. We've got TV's own, Mr. Simon Hickson. Simon, welcome to While I Was Resting.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks for having me on.
And I always start the show by just getting the guest, that would be you, to just tell us a little bit about themselves and what your career has been and is.
Okie doke. Well, when Jason says I'm a TV legend and you're thinking, like, I've never heard of him, you may have heard of me more in connection with Trev, who I worked with for many years, going by the name of Trevor and Simon. And for people who were old enough to have existed last century, we were regulars on Saturday morning TV. We worked on Going Live and Live and Kick In on BBC One on Saturday mornings for 10 years. And we've done various other things as well, but I think that's the thing people know us most for.
10 years, that's a great kind of length of... it's a long-standing TV career, you know. And when was that late 80s to late 90s?
We started in 1987, and then we stopped that in 1997. Yeah. And then we did a few other things as well. So, you know, there's always been other kind of programmes we've popped up on and done, other series and so on. But I think it's the Saturday morning stuff most people know us for. Yeah. If they're really keen, they may remember things like 100% that we did for BBC Two. Okay. And honestly, this is so obscure, I don't think it even exists on Wikipedia or anything.
Really?
We did a TV series that, by default, was set in either 1999 or 2000, a series called 20th Century Stuff, which was a 10-part series for Channel 5. And it was hosted by Jeff Green, and there was... You wouldn't even call them teams, really, because there were two sides to it. So there was Jeff Green in the middle, Lisa Rogers presenting on one side, and me and Trev on the other. And we had to... It was a kind of... I don't know. A kind of Room 101 in reverse. Okay. In that we had to argue for things that should go into a kind of vault of iconic items from the 20th century.
Yeah, like
so it's kind of sealing the century. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And we. Do
you remember some of the things that went in there?
Oddly enough, me and Trev, they didn't really like me and Trev because we were putting in things like, I think we put in Action Man.
Well, it's a big part of my childhood, yeah.
I think we put in Sheds.
Sheds?
Yeah, I think Caravans as well. We were kind of very...
yeah.
I mean, those things should exist still now anyway.
Well, yeah, definitely.
And then, weirdly enough, there was always a special guest who would come on and talk about certain things. So I remember, is it Trevor Bayliss who invented the wind-up radio? Is that his name?
I'm not knowledgeable enough to know.
Anyway, I think
know
it was
the
him.
Guy from
he came
TV
on. But really weirdly, and I can't remember why, Max Clifford came on as a guest.
Okay.
And that was weird. This was obviously before we knew anything dreadful about him.
Yeah, of course.
But there was a sense of dread about him anyway.
Really?
Well, I mean, you know, here was a guy who had made his career out of making up stories to get people in the press, really, I think, and sometimes doing the dirty on people and everything. So, you know, but he came on as a guest, and obviously we were kind of co-hosts or regulars. So I remember kind of trying to be polite and friendly towards him, and he was... I don't know what he thought of us, but he was a bit iffy. He was a bit cold. And looking back on it, I don't mind.
No, it's probably for the best, really, when you think about it. Yeah, it was strange. Strange that he should be on a show like that.
Well, it wasn't a kids' show.
No,
you know, it was a Channel 5 kind of late night show.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was a guest, and I can't remember why.
Okay. Who knows? Who knows? I'm sure if we asked him, he wouldn't tell us.
Well, he couldn't now.
No, he couldn't now, could he? No. Now, I know you also still do the odd appearance.
We do indeed, yeah.
I've seen you on This Morning, and
we've done This Morning occasionally, which was nice because we reunite with Philip Schofield. And
of
again,
course.
for people who don't know, when we did Going Live, me and Trevor were doing comedy sketches, but the programme was hosted by Philip Schofield and Sarah Green. Then later on, Andy Peters and Emma Forbes. And then after that, Zoe Ball and Jamie Theakston.
Yeah.
So we kind of worked our way through all of them.
Through all the
doing
presenters.
sketches.
Yeah.
And we used to do live sketches with lots of celebrities. And sometimes, ones where you'd be really in awe of them. Doing sketches and things with people like Paul McCartney.
You had Kylie on there.
Kylie Minogue,
Yeah.
Jason Donovan, all of the PWL regulars. Even Mel Brooks. We did a sketch with Mel
Really?
Brooks. Yeah.
Comedy legend. Right, there you go. What did he make of that?
It was funny because it was very last minute.
Yeah.
There was no time to rehearse.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking him through it in the dressing room when we heard on our earpieces Andy Peters linked to us, and we weren't there. So then Andy Peters had to cover. We raced into the studio. We got into place. We did the sketch. All of Mel Brooks's lines were written on card, which was held up for him. And afterwards, he shook our hands and he said, "Congratulations, boys. That was almost a sketch."
Fantastic.
Which I'll take.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to take that, aren't you? Okay, so obviously the podcast, we've done the introduction, we've got a little bit of background there, but obviously we're talking about some of the interesting things you've done in between the stuff that you're well known for. Mm-hmm. So I know you've been doing compiling a little list, as many people do, or mental list.
I've been racking my brains, and I think the key thing is, which can you remember? The ones that you can't remember are most probably not going to be much fun to listen to because they're so traumatic.
Yeah.
The first one that came to mind, actually, taking them roughly chronologically, I suppose, was a job I did in 1982 when technically I was still at university at that point, but I did drama in Manchester, so I was doing acting and I was doing comedy stuff with Trev, so I was kind of aware of what could have or would go on to become a career. But in the summer holidays, you would take jobs. And I did a few during the summer holidays at university because basically anyone who I went to university with who was rich had kind of various money to live off. But, I didn't come from a rich background. I think I was one of the few people in my year at university who got a full grant, from the government back then.
Back then, right.
Because if you had wealthy parents, you'd get a partial grant that they topped up.
I was the same. I got a full grant. I was a single parent family. I was just,
I
was lucky.
So, I was kind of covered for the time in university, but then you'd sign on in the summer or take a few jobs. And I worked for Manpower in Manchester. And I'd be sent off to do different jobs that would just last 1 or 2 days. And one of my favourites, or one that sticks out in my memory, was being sent up to a kind of a huge butcher's in Haywood to load frozen pig carcasses, to unload frozen pig carcasses from lorries into this huge refrigerated warehouse.
Okay.
And they trusted me. I was like a kid.
Yeah.
And I was and I'm not strong either. And I was balancing a whole frozen pig on my shoulder.
Wow.
And the more you took out of the wagon, the ice is starting to melt. The slippier the floor was getting and everything. So I was carrying all these frozen pigs into this big warehouse. Now, that was only a couple of days, and that was about enough.
That sounds like really hard work. Genuinely, yeah.
It was kind of character building.
I did a warehouse job once, and I left after one day, and I just thought it was stupid. So Reebok. And we got sent from the job centre. This was just after university, I think, just doing temp work and things like that. And we were on this. We had to get stuff out, pick up a sheet. It said what to get. It was going to get sent to a shop or something like that. And then we had to put it in somewhere. And then we had to put it. And then these other people would come back and then pick up the sheet and then check that. And I thought, why don't the people who check just get it out? It seemed like a total waste of manpower.
Well, I did one of my days was in a kind of a depot that supplied all of the car exhausts for Quick Fit.
Oh yeah.
So it wasn't a Quick Fit; it was where all the car exhausts are stored. So it's massive. Yeah. And again, it was a similar thing of people being given sheets of paper that says, "This is the order, make this up." But they
just didn't trust us to get the right thing, so they'd have a whole team of people checking what people had got.
Well, when I did that, though, I worked with 3 young lads, and I was just in there again for a couple of days, and I really hated that one. Actually, I wasn't going to mention this one.
Yeah,
there were 3 lads, and one of them was constantly bullied by the other 2. Quite horribly so. And I found it very uncomfortable as an outsider
Yeah.
going into that situation, really.
It must be awful.
And then I did it. Well, yeah.
When you're young.
And I was there for 2 days, and I left, and I was aware that this was this poor guy's life, horrible.
Doesn't sound nice.
Anyway,
moving on to more pleasant ones.
Well, I'm jumping around a bit now.
That's fine.
Because I realised that when we did the manpower thing, you do all sorts of daft jobs. And then also, when me and Trev moved down to London, so I'm jumping a few years ahead before I'll come back.
Okay.
Both me and Trev worked for Manpower, and we would do all sorts of different jobs. Trev had a job for quite a while of putting handles on paint tins. But, that's exactly what it is, I had some other ones then, but now I'm going to go back to 1982.
Okay.
When I was at university, and this was in May, and there was quite a famous event. So basically, in May of 1982, the Pope John Paul II, came to Heaton Park in Manchester.
Oh, right, yes.
And this was major.
I remember that visit. It's Pope-mobile.
I don't think, exactly. Pope-mobile. And I don't think the Pope or a Pope had ever come to Britain before. For this kind of a visit, anyway. And
certainly
it was also
not in the Pope-mobile.
Well, the Pope-mobile was bulletproof as well, because the year before people had a pop at the Pope. Yeah, so he'd been shot the year before.
Yeah.
Then he comes to Manchester. What an idiot!
What, are you crazy? He's just asking for trouble.
So he goes to Heaton Park, and me and my mate Jed find out that the job's going in Heaton Park,
Right.
and so we applied for them, and we got a job working for. So the people behind it was House of Fraser, who ran a big department store in Manchester called Kendall's. And they were looking for people. Basically, House of Fraser had put together food packages that people could buy. So, I mean, this is kind of, if it was now, you'd have loads of caravans and, you'd have not caravans, wagons selling all sorts of fast food and everything. But there wasn't this kind of thing. So they were selling literally a white paper bag that you couldn't even see what was in it. And inside it was a carton of drink, a ham sandwich and an apple. And they were selling them for £1. Now, that might not sound too bad, but this was 1982. It was most probably the equivalent of selling an apple, a ham sandwich and a drink for 15 quid or something. It was ridiculous. And because there was nothing else available. Yeah. And you would work a shift, and they gave us all these white paper boiler suits. So I had these white suits on, so we looked like aliens. Then we had these trays with all these bags on. And me and Jed were wandering around, all these people who were queuing overnight. This was throughout the night.
Yeah.
For the Pope coming the next day. 250,000 people were there. And we were going around to these people going, does anyone want to buy any food? And all of these people were going, what's in it? And we go, well, a soft drink, an apple and a ham sandwich. And they went, how much? And we go, £1. And they'd look at us. And like I say, this was so outrageous.
Yeah.
And we just kept saying to people, we said, don't buy them this shit. And we sold, they made us hit a target, And we went back after our first shift. And between us, we'd sold maybe 10. Okay. And I think we were meant to sell about 50 each. And we went back and we were meant to do another shift, and we just got sacked on the spot. And we were quite glad. I wasn't happy. I felt we were ripping people off. And we went back to one of the families we'd been chatting to, and then we actually just stayed and watched the Pope and waved at him.
Oh, did he wave back?
He did.
Bless him.
I don't know if he was waving specifically
but in your general direction. I wave in your general direction. Yes. Lovely.
So, that was my Pope job. And then again, when I came down to London and we were doing all manpower jobs, I ended up actually getting tied into one job for quite a while. So, and this was when me and Trevor had moved down to London specifically to pursue a career in comedy. So back then, Manchester wasn't what it is now, and there weren't any venues to do comedy gigs really. So, and we'd done the Edinburgh Festival, and we'd done quite well at the Edinburgh Festival. We actually made money.
Wow, that's rare.
Yeah. And people up there were saying, you've got to go down to London. So we did. We moved down to London, and we got in touch with a few of the venues, and we started picking up gigs. But obviously, we still had to kind of earn, a lot of the gigs back then were door splits.
Yeah.
And you'd go and, whatever the door split was, it was then split again because there was me and Trev. And we'd sometimes get a £5 each or something, So we had to look through all the work.
5 ham sandwiches.
Then we ended up, again, signing up for Manpower. And I got a job at the British College of Ophthalmic Opticians.
Okay.
Which is based then, I think it's moved now, it was based in Earls Court. And I went there, and the job was, well, actually, I think it worked in two ways. I think they started me off with some basic office admin. It was quite a nice place.
Not let you loose on anybody's eyes.
Yeah. No. And after a while, they obviously thought I was okay. And they said, we've got another job we'd like you to do. I said, it's quite a long one. And they said, would you... They did something that you're not meant to do. They kind of... So the idea is if you go through Manpower... your wages are paid by Manpower, and it's kind of,
So
and they said, do you want to leave and then come back and we'll employ you? Right, so we did a deal, and in the end, it meant they were paying less than they would have done to Manpower, but I was getting a bit more.
Yeah.
And I think I was there for about 6 months, and what I had to do was, this was pre-computers. I mean, not pre-computers,
everybody having a computer, yeah.
And they had minutes from something like 10 years of council meetings, and the council meetings would take place about twice a year, and then there were also 6 subdivisions of committees that would meet 4 times a year, and there were minutes of all of those as well. I mean, we're talking boxes piled high of written notes, minutes from meetings.
Yeah.
And they said, would you make a file for it that can cross-reference everything?
Okay.
So I literally was kind of given the biggest stack of index cards you've ever seen, and would have to read through these minutes and make a note on an index card, say, of, I can't remember subcategories, but blah, blah, blah. And then whenever blah, blah, blah turned up in the meetings, reference that it was on page such a thing, whatever note, and put that onto the card. And slowly build up this massive system. It took 6 months.
Yeah, it sounds like a massive undertaking without a computer to try and cross-reference stuff, because you can't just do a search.
No, I was literally wading through all this stuff, and they would, I like to think that a few years later they'd have gone on to computers, and my index cards would have been perfect for them just to put all the info into computers.
It might even be called now the Hickson system.
They
might have a computer's bit of software in your name.
It was the funniest thing, because the college is, when I say college, it's maybe misleading, because it's sort of the headquarters for the admin for anyone who's an optician.
So they've got lots of places.
So anyone who is an ophthalmic optician in this country will be a member of the BCOO.
Yeah.
Downstairs in the basement was the College for Dispensing Opticians, because they're different.
Okay.
And I think over the years they've come together and they're all in one. And also there's another part of this as well, which I quite liked, called the Worshipful Company of Spectacle Makers. They were part of it.
They sound like old school.
It was a grand building, and they had a grand meeting room with, a huge oak table that would have been, I don't know, 20 feet long, enough for kind of many people to sit around it.
Was there a big eye chart at the end of it?
I wish.
Yeah.
There were just grand oiled paintings of all these, people in glasses, of course.
Of course.
And I would sit, and they'd leave me alone in there. I just sat in there every day and was writing these notes down. And the one thing I remember, and this was a dreadful affectation I think that both me and Trev had, I'd sit there making notes with a black coffee and a café crème.
Oh.
So anyone listening, a café crème is like a small, you most probably know what café crème is. Very small, dinky cigars. And you'll buy a little tin of them. And they'd have 10 in. And we used to smoke.
Sophisticated.
This was when, exactly.
Of course.
This is when you could smoke indoors.
Yeah. Remember those days.
I used to be as well. I was still in my sort of student kind of head where I was wearing suits, but second-hand clothing. Go to the shops and all the second-hand stores and get nice old-fashioned suits. And this was 1987. So I was going to work sometimes in a suit and a shirt and tie, but sometimes a suit and a black polo neck, because that was a nice Joy Division style look.
Yeah, also quite Roger Moore. Especially if it was a safari suit.
Indeed. And I also had more hair then as well, so I had kind of a big quiff.
Oh, great.
But the boss, Martin Lynch, and I did some research today. I was interested by this because I was thinking, God, I wonder how, if any of these people are still with us. Because they were old then.
Okay.
Now, Martin Lynch, I couldn't know, but I did find a reference that made me believe, if he is the person I found online, that if he is still alive, he would be 93. Okay. So anyway, Martin Lynch called me into the office, and he was like, he was very grand, and he reminded me of Denholm Elliott. He was very like Denholm Elliott, and I wish I could do a Denholm Elliott impersonation, but I can't. He called me into the office, and I was a bit nervous, being called. If I was called in, I'm thinking, what's up?
Yeah. And
he sat me down and he said, Simon, I just wondered, why do you wear a black polo neck? And I went, I don't know, it's fashionable, And he went, you're not a fascist, are you? And I went, no. And he went, it's just that Oswald Mosley and his lot, they always used to wear black polo necks.
Right, yeah.
Oops,
dear, yeah. Missed that one. You should have said, if I told you, I'd have to kill you.
But yeah, I did that job for quite a while, and every now and then.
And that must have been around about
while
you were starting doing Trevor and Simon.
Yeah.
TV
yeah,
work.
In fact, I got. No, what did I say? 87, 87. Yeah. No, so it's a very. We moved down to London in 86.
Okay.
So it's literally building up to that. Yeah,
the
year before that. I did actually, and we moved down to London. And I did actually once have to take time off from working at the college because I got what you might call a proper job. And I think Trev worked at this as well, but we all got called in to go to some mass audition to work at the toy fair at Earls Court.
Oh, right.
Which is this kind of,
people
not,
on the
for the
podcast
public,
before
really, but,
regularly go there. Yeah.
And everyone went along for the audition interview. and many friends got jobs demonstrating toys and just as themselves.
Yeah.
And they pulled me up to one side and they said, we've got another job. Would you consider doing it? And they told me about it. And then I got called in for another interview. And so there was a game that came out. This is 1986, a game called Quotations. And it was a board game by Hasbro, I think. Mm-hmm. And you had to match, you'd read out quotations on a card and you had to match it to the famous person who said it. And they wanted some famous people from the game to demonstrate the game. And they decided that the people who should demonstrate the game should be Groucho Marx and Marilyn Monroe. So they wanted me to audition to be Groucho Marx.
Yeah.
And astonishingly, beyond belief, I got this job. And it was quite something because it was a week's work. And I think I was paid £700 for that week. Now, in 1986,
that's a lot of money.
That was a fortune.
Especially in 1986. Yeah. That's
so
great.
I had to go to the college and say, do you mind if I take a week off? And they were really good about that, And I stood at the stall demonstrating this quotations game with a young woman who was Marilyn Monroe.
Marilyn, yeah.
And, everyone would be going by. And then at one point, the people from Hasbro came up and they said, Oh, they were all panicking. They go, we've got a special guest coming. We've got a special guest. You've got to do a really good demonstration of the game. And we went, oh, okay. And then they ushered in this gentleman. And rather than him just standing there, they placed a seat down for him. And he sat him on this seat on his own.
No pressure
and
then.
We had to play the game in front of him. And it was none other than Jeremy Beadle.
Oh, watch out. He's about. Did he like it?
He did, yeah. Well, he was very kind. He was very nice to us and thanked us,
He was really into books, wasn't he?
Was he? Well, I'm guessing he was into games. I don't know.
I seem to remember reading on his obituary that he had this massive book collection. He used to donate books to... I could be completely wrong, but I think he had this real thing for books, which kind of means why you might be interested in quotations.
Yeah.
Who knows?
You have to research me a bit.
Yeah.
I have realised that I'm talking about all these jobs I've done, and so far the people I've worked with are Jeremy Beadle and Max Clifford. Anyone who appears with me dies.
Yeah. Well, it's going to happen to everyone eventually,
Where am I then?
So we're doing with Code 86. You've done your filing. You've been at the toy fair. Yeah.
And then eventually we got a proper job. This is good, you see. I didn't make notes earlier, but now things are coming back to me.
Well, things just spring into your mind when you start talking,
this
don't you?
Yeah. But again, through manpower, this was an amazing job. I got a job as the doorman at the Colombian Embassy in London.
That sounds quite dodgy in a way.
So basically, oh goodness, And this was hard work, because, not hard work, that's wrong, it was easy work. But me and Trevor were doing lots of gigs, and we were gigging at night.
Yeah.
And I was getting no sleep, I mean, this was kind of quite full on. I had to be at the embassy. The shift would start at 7 in the morning. Sometimes they were like 12-hour shifts. Now, what you do is, the Colombian Embassy is kind of behind Harrods. I think it must be quite near to where the Ecuadorian one is, where Julian Assange was.
There's a lot over that side of town.
So somewhere down there, and my job was doorman. I'd sit at a desk.
Yeah.
And in this building there were other offices as well, so I'd direct people to where the embassy was. And I had a few other jobs as well. You had to walk up and down the staircase around. It had one of those grand elevators in the middle of the staircase, those zigzaggy metal frame ones. Do you know the type I mean? Where I'm doing a mime here, and of course not. Yeah,
like you get
like
films.
a concertina, you're getting spy films,
spy films, like old Bond films. Yeah.
And so I had to live like that, and the staircase twirled around it, and I had to walk up and down it twice a day to check all the light bulbs were working, and if any light bulbs weren't working, you had to replace them. Now, I was doing this in conjunction with another mate of mine, Simon Bly, who is a stand-up comedian and also a big karate guy now. And Simon, we'd alternate shifts. And this is complicated to explain. We were doing this job because the guy who normally did it had to take time off. And we didn't know this at the time, but because of family troubles. It turns out, I believe, that he was very upset, and his son was not well at all, and it even I think there was some story of him holding his dad up at gunpoint or something quite dreadful, basically quite a tragedy and a difficult time for this poor guy.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, this poor guy still lived in the Colombian Embassy and lived in a basement down below it, so would occasionally come up every now and then. And I would take over from Simon, and there was a locker that we could share. And Simon, we were very young, okay? Yeah. This is the excuse for this. Simon would leave daft, crazy notes for me in the locker, that I'd pick up, daft things to make me laugh. And he did this one day with a picture of a picture that put the guy who normally does the job in a compromising position with his dog.
Oh no!
It was just an offensive, horrible cartoon that Simon had drawn. And I came into work and did the shift and went back. And Simon says, "Did you get the picture?" I went, "There's nothing there."
Uh-oh.
Well, it turns out like the guy had come up and opened the locker
and
found this very shocking picture. So I think we most probably kind of, didn't help his recovery.
No.
And if he's listening, I apologise. No. But as we've learned already, most of the people I'm talking about are dead.
Probably not around. So, posthumous apology.
And I apologise as well to the people who have the little kind of fancy shoe shop near to Harvey Nichols for one morning pinching your milk on the way in.
Oh, well, you've got to have a cup of tea, haven't you?
Yeah,
You're doing important work.
And anyone who works in that shop is most probably dead now.
Yeah, so they won't know. They won't remember.
And then I got a proper job as far as, working on Saturday morning TV.
Yeah.
So I guess...
did you kind of... Because I guess when you started on Saturday morning TV, you were just doing occasional sketches. So did that take up like the full week once you started doing that? Yeah, it took the
full week because we, like most comedians on the circuit, we had a 20-minute set.
Yeah.
And that 20-minute set had last you as long as you wanted it to. And then we got a job on Saturday morning TV, and on the first Saturday did 20 minutes worth of sketches.
Yeah.
Because each week we'd have about 6 or 7 slots, roughly 2-3 minutes long. Yeah. And so week after week, we had to write 20 minutes of new material. And it also involved, apart from being live on the Saturday morning, a kind of Monday post-show breakdown where, analyse everything. Tuesday and Wednesday writing. Thursday rehearsal. Friday rehearsal in the studio. Saturday the show. As we got more into it, that would mellow a bit. We realised there was no real need for us to go in on the Monday. And we could also sometimes just rehearse on set on the Friday. So it gave us more time to write.
Yeah. And were you quite disciplined with the writing? Were you good at sort of making sure it was like a full day of work? Or
I think we were disciplined enough that we had to get it done.
You got to do it, yeah.
If we got it done early or whatever. I mean, it was, again, it's weird in that historically, in the first few years, we were writing on paper, and then the BBC would send a courier on a bike to pick them up.
Yeah.
Then fax machines came along. The BBC gave us a fax machine so we could write on paper and fax it to them. Then eventually computers came along, and I bought one of those Amstrad.
Oh, the Amstrad.
I can't think what it's called now.
Had the cassette built into it,
yeah,
didn't it?
You would have to load. You'd use a cassette each time to load the program.
Load the program, like a word processing.
And also,
program.
it was the opposite of how screens are now. So you would be writing white on black. Is that right? I seem to remember.
Yeah. I seem to remember them being like greeny. What's that?
Maybe.
Or maybe I don't know. Maybe
I can't.
But maybe I'm confusing it with Alien. The sort of 70s computer terminal. With the green writing on black.
It was. I think I want to even say something like Amstrad 9215 9152, something like that.
I don't know.
Anyway, it was a very early computer. Now, of course, even then we were still sending stuff by fax.
Yeah.
But then they created. We had this new software that I loaded onto my computer, Trev loaded onto his computer, and it would open up boxes, and me and Trev could type to each other. So, I don't know even
early
know
messenger.
Yeah. And then that was useful, and then we could, I think we could link up with the BBC to send the sketches to them as well. So yes, we went through. It's funny, isn't it, to think how. I don't know.
You went through quite a technological revolution there. You went from paper to basically kind of early internet.
So I mean, they were kind of, I suppose, on paper they were. We chat and think about them before writing them down, whereas on computer you can change them and whatever. Yeah. So that was 10 years. So there was no time to do anything else really. We were asked occasionally, I mean, this is still in the world of acting and everything, but we were asked to do panto, for example, but we just couldn't commit, you know. And it was a real shame, actually, because in the height of Saturday morning TV, we were offered quite a bit of money to do pantomime.
Yeah, pantos could be very lucrative. Yeah.
But we just had to say no because there was just no way we could commit to it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure a lot of actors, like panto is the big earner of the year.
Yeah.
It really is. They'll do a big one and...
So I've covered the Pope. I've covered the pig carrying.
Yeah.
I've covered the British College of Ophthalmic Opticians.
Yeah.
I was a bit mad when we first moved down to London and I was doing those manpower jobs. I don't think, if looking back on it, it'd be difficult to say I was most probably happy. It's difficult to know. All I do know is at one point going to a manpower social do or Christmas do.
Oh, yeah.
With Trev, where I just ended up sat in the pub crying.
Oh, no.
And there was another occasion where I did have... So I had a kind of a briefcase, but it was solid plastic. A solid plastic black briefcase. And for some reason, all I remember is the next day waking up and I'd smashed it to bits on my way home and all my hand was cut and everything. So I think I was a bit mad. But,
so how long did you and Trev spend kind of working on things before you kind of cracked it?
Well, I guess we were quite lucky because we started doing stuff at university, graduated in me in 83, Trevor in 84. Which brings me back to something I missed. And then moved down to London in 86 and then got the job on the BBC in 87. So we'd been doing the circuit, less than a year when that came up. And I think it's a good job it came up at the time it did, because we weren't really suited to the circuit, to be honest. It was very much the domain of male solo stand-ups.
Yeah.
I think we were too gentle for it, really. So the TV break was a good thing for us. But it's just made me think that when we were at university, I was a year ahead of Trev. So when I graduated in 83, we made a decision we would do comedy together, but I had to kill time for a year until Trev graduated. So I ran a library in Cornbrook College in Manchester.
Right.
And again, the things people have trusted me with, it's ridiculous. I set up from scratch a business library. And so they gave me the space. Then the books I didn't order the books, the academics ordered the books.
Yeah.
But I then kind of built, you had to put the shelves in. Then I had to label all the books according to the Dewey system. So I had to learn the Dewey system.
Oh, yeah, the Dewey Decimal
and
System.
sticking those little kind of, bits of paper on the spine of a book and covering it with sellotape to hold it in place. And and I ran a library which nobody ever came to. I literally, once it was up and running, I would sit there all day, waiting. And every now and then a teacher would pop in and go, "How's it going?"
Yeah,
fine.
You don't even have the internet to play about with back then. You got some books to read.
But then another teacher would pop in one day and go like, "Oh, so what are you going to do?" And I go, "Oh, I'm in a double act. I'm want to be a comedian." And he'd go, "Oh, tell us a joke then." And I go, "I don't really know any jokes.
It's more sketches."
And another time, another teacher also said, "You want to be a comedian?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "You don't seem very funny." Which is fair enough.
Fair enough. I go, Tony Hancock probably got that a lot. Cheer up, Tony. So that took you up to Trevor and Simon. Yeah. And so that was 10 years.
10 years. Yeah.
And that must have been like a big change for you.
It was. It was what we wanted to do, but we kind of, I think things were different then to maybe how people approach stuff now, because there wasn't a career plan, there was no idea, there wasn't even really a notion of how to go about, say, making money or security or anything like that. We were just happy that we were doing what we wanted to do. So it's kind of weird. It's kind of the fame aspect of it, which is all really nice, was a kind of byproduct rather than a thing in itself. Whereas I think sometimes some people would think like, I'm going to be famous and find a way to do it. Literally our aim was to make each other laugh and then find a way of opening that out to make other people laugh. We had a kind of, in the early days, we had a weird, without having a name for it, we had a philosophy that was almost a bit like Dogma 95, I would say.
Oh yeah.
Because we thought of ourselves as part of the alternative comedy circuit.
Yeah.
And a part of our rules were that if we ever used props, and we did used to use a lot of props, it was very props based, but the point was the props had to be in existence. You wouldn't make a prop.
Okay.
It had to be from some kind of existing thing that we would then turn to our needs for comedy. So, for example, we found an old sponge. It was a big, how like the seat of a chair could be a dense sponge.
Oh yes, yeah.
So it was the inside of a seat of a chair, but it was just this dense sponge, and it was scabby and horrible. It was disgusting. And we wanted to do some comedy with that. So we came up with this whole sketch. This is pre-Saturday morning TV, by the way. We couldn't have done this on children's TV.
Yeah.
We did a whole sketch called The Life of the Sponge. And it was just basically the life of Jesus, but if Jesus was a sponge. And it just had all these cheap jokes in about how they tried to bang the nails in, but they kept bouncing out and things like that. But that was it. It was just a routine based around a big sponge. Mistaking the sponge for or drawing a parallel with Jesus.
Yeah.
It was most probably very offensive, but I don't think that was our intention.
No. But I think one of the things people loved about Trevor and Simon was it was very silly. It wasn't telling jokes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's why it was, because I remember it was very popular when I was at university. So it wasn't just kids who were watching.
Yeah.
You had a big student following.
Yeah, I think we were very influenced by kind of people like Spike Milligan and Monty Python and more surreal stuff, and also we were very influenced at the time as well by Saturday Night Live, which for people who watch Saturday Night Live now may not be aware of more. So in the 70s, late 70s, when it was Steve Martin and
Eddie Murphy did a season. And
Eddie Murphy, John Belushi. It had a slightly different feel, and it could be quite surreal. Like some of our sketches, we're blatantly indebted to things like. There's a very famous Dan Aykroyd one that I'm sure if you look on YouTube you find a book called Bassomatic. and it's just him doing an advert for the Bassomatic. And he's basically got a blender, which is not, like you would have a blender.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of saying how, Bassomatic makes great bass drinks. And he gets the fish, a bass, so he's got a real fish.
Yeah.
And he drops it in and he switches the blender on. And of course, this was all live. It all flies everywhere because he's not got the lid on properly. And then at the end, it cuts to, I can't remember the name now, but one of the female members of the team taking a drink of it and going, that's great bass. And that kind of thing just really appealed to us.
Yeah.
And again, it did kind of fit in with that thing of they just made a joke. They just did a surreal thing based around a blender and a bass.
Yeah, it was just kind of silly. Yeah, it is that kind of Spike Milligan goon show. So, Monty Python.
Well, and again,
Nonsense
all those things never had punchlines. They did. Yeah. I used to love the way with Spike Milligan they'd just end the sketches by all marching in order, going, "What do we do next? What do we do? Oh no, what was it? What do we do now? What do we do now?"
Yeah,
just great.
So he did that, and so then post Trevor and Simon.
Post Trevor and Simon, well, excuse me. Post Trevor and Simon, we're still doing stuff occasionally.
Yeah,
but
of course.
But Trevor lives in Broadstairs and I'm in London, so we do occasional things. Like we met up the other week to do a Christmas show for Now 80s channel. Introducing all the kind of Christmas hits.
That sounds like my dream channel.
I know, but that's really good fun. So occasionally we meet up and do things, but it's very difficult because I'm very boring now, and actually, you could argue I'm resting permanently because I do have a full-time job now. So I have to, if me and Trev are asked to do anything, we try and fit it in when I've got a day off.
Yeah.
But I now work for a charity. I work for a charity called MediCinema. And I run a cinema in Chelsea and Westminster Hospital for all of the patients and their families.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of posts and pictures about that. It looks like it's a really
an amazing charity thing. Yeah, I mean, anyone, if you ever go to View Cinemas, you'll see a trailer there. In that one, there's an advert for MediCinema.
I've seen it,
and that's filmed in the cinema I run.
Yeah,
and that the patient in that advert, Sienna, is a patient who regularly comes to our screenings, who's still in the hospital.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this coming up to 3 years now, and it was quite a radical change, actually, I suppose. I'd spent, let me do a quick adding up, since university, 83, 93, 2008, 2013, over 30 years, 32, 33 years, basically making a living, or doing my best to make a living, working with Trev, doing comedy. And writing. I mean, post TV stuff, me and Trevor have done lots of writing for children's TV, for CBeebies and so on. Trev, in fact, just this year won a BAFTA.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah, he won a BAFTA for writing Get Well Soon Hospital. So that's carried on. But then I reached a point just coming up to 3 years ago where I had to make some radical decisions, really, about my life. And I needed to look for a proper job. And even then, I was quite kind of specific, I suppose, because it's fine saying you need to get a proper job, but it was tied in with a lot of other things as well that meant this job had to be the right job for, if you like, my state of mind, It couldn't be just a job for the sake of money.
No.
And I said to friends, I wouldn't mind working in the charity sector, or possibly for the NHS, something like that. And I started looking for jobs. And a friend of mine, Andrea, just got in touch with me. And she said, what about this job? What about running a cinema for patients in a hospital? And I just said to her, well, that doesn't exist. And she goes, it does. And she showed me the job application. And I read it. And the next thing is, well, I'm not going to get that job. It had very strict requirements. I mean, firstly, running a cinema, being a proper cinema manager.
New thing.
Beyond running a cinema, which in itself is a thing, you also had to then kind of manage teams of nurses and teams of volunteers. And, there was a lot of criteria for the job, and the application was quite dense. And the application said, you could apply and then also send in a page, up to 2 sheets of A4 of a statement. And again, I was going like, look, Andrew, I'm not going to get this job. And I have Andrea totally to thank for this. Without her, without her spotting it, but without her ongoing support, I most probably wouldn't have dreamed of trying. So I kind of put together an application. I had to sort out a CV. I mean, I've never had a job interview in my life,
Yeah.
So, and I did a bash her CV, and of course, and Andrea again was very instrumental. She said, "Let me see," and my CV was useless. It's listing. I did sketches on Going Live.
Yeah.
And again, with a bit of thought and a lot of help from friends, I put together a CV that focused on the kind of attributes that would apply to this kind of job, which can be done. It's kind of
there is
I don't
kind of
think
an art
of this
form to put a CV together.
Yeah, and
to show off your best side.
I've done in the past. I've done workshops for Lewisham Youth Theatre where I've worked with bunches of kids, bunches of kids.
Bunches of kids, multiple bunches, yeah.
A bunch of kids.
Yeah, a bunch of kids.
And I realised I've managed teams effectively.
Yeah.
And I've done various things like this, and I've dealt with large groups of people. And anyway, I kind of put together a CV and a statement and applied and got called in for an interview, which, again, astonished me. I didn't imagine that to happen at all. And the CEO of the charity said it will be what was the word? It's a competency-based interview. And I went, okay. And I was thinking, well, what the hell's a competency-based issue? And why would someone say that unless it's a thing?
Yeah,
so I kind of...
Actually, we're looking for somebody in competence.
Yeah, exactly. But if you look up competency-based interviews, you'll find out it's a strategy. It's a way of interviewing people.
Right.
And it's a way of interviewing people where, because the job is something new for them, what you do is question them about other things they've done that may be different to see how they would apply what they've learned there to future jobs. And then I found out that there's a system for answering questions in a competency-based issue, which is called the STAR system, which is situation, task, action, result.
This is good knowledge here.
So, God, I'll tell you what, I certainly prepared for this interview. The day before the interview, I decided I'd got to give myself a break here, I'll go mad. And I decided to go to the cinema. So I went to the cinema. I went to the Cineworld in Bromley, and I went to see Hidden Figures, which I really enjoyed. And I came out of the cinema, and I'm looking around me at the cinema and thinking, I'm going for a job interview tomorrow to manage a cinema. So, and I'm trying to give myself a break and relax. I go down to the foyer and go, "Is your cinema manager here, please?" And they go, "Oh, what's wrong?" And they go, "Oh, no, nothing. And the cinema manager comes out, and then I just spend 15 minutes quizzing them about running a cinema and whatever.
Yeah, well, why not? You're there. You've got to make the most of it.
Yeah. So then I went in for the interview the next day and faced the CEO and the director of operations and also the director of nursing from the hospital, and this panel of three of them. And somehow
was that an actual first time?
First interview, God, that was like traumatic. That. Yeah, and I hadn't got a clue how it went. I felt it was okay, but when you come out of something like that, you can't remember anything because you're just thinking I need a drink now.
Yeah, you just got through it. You're just I've done it. What will be, will
amazingly, be. No, I did get the job, and it was interesting because I was offered the job, but I was kind of called in. They said, maybe you should come in and see a screen and see how it works. And I started to panic then because I thought, oh God, I've not got the job. They want, And what it was quite reasonably so. They wanted me to be sure that I wanted to do it because this was such a radical change in career.
Yeah.
They wanted to know. I think they believed I was genuine about it, but they wanted me to be happy with it. So they wanted me to come in and see how it works.
Yeah, you could have turned up and go, "Oh God, this is what I thought."
Yeah,
I've never done anything like this.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's
I
terrible.
did. I do remember when my boss Paul, who's the loveliest of guys and the best person to be in charge of this place. I shadowed him for the first few weeks, and then about a couple of weeks in, he'd let me do the ward rounds and deal with the nurses and slowly let me take over the running the technical side of it, all of that. And I remember coming up to a Saturday screening, and we were there for the Thursday evening screening, and he just went to me and went, "Oh, right, well, hope it all goes well on Saturday." And it dawning on me, what, you're not going to be here? And that first time when I'll be doing it all myself. Because it's quite, it most probably makes me sound a bit kind of essentially I'm putting on films for people, But I
but
did
it's
need
more
to
than
learn
that.
I needed to learn the technical side of it. I'll bore you now. I had to learn how to ingest a film, or rather,
yes.
how to ingest a DCP,
DCP,
and then to load
yes,
the
of
KDM.
course.
All of that I had
All
to
that
learn.
stuff, yeah.
But then, obviously, because it's in a hospital, even though the screenings are 7:30, I spend the afternoon going around the wards, speaking to the nurses in the nurse station to firstly find out who is able to come, not who wants to come, who are they happy to leave the ward. Then I go around asking all the patients who wants to come. And then later on, we always have 2 nurses on duty. They turn up and I go over the list with them. They revisit the patients to check they're happy for them to come down. Then later on, our volunteers turn up and volunteers go to the wards to collect the patients. And we bring patients down in beds, we bring patients down in wheelchairs. And they can't believe it. I mean, this is a real cinema. The Medicinema build real cinemas in hospitals. They take no money from the NHS. These are all funded from donations. And it's
great.
just the most amazing charity. I mean, the most common thing patients say is they just go, "Oh, you made me feel abnormal. You took my mind off things for just a couple of hours." What it can do for them, for their well-being while they're in hospital. There is even, we do lots of research into this. There's even sort of instances where you can say we're enabling people to get better quicker.
Yeah.
Because
it's like therapy.
We're helping helping their minds and their state of being.
Positivity.
And even with the kind of physical side of things, we go to the wards and there'll be a patient who's, they're having their physio. And the physio team will say, we need to get them up and moving. It'd be great. Get them down to the cinema, and again,
it gives them a reason.
Getting them back into that kind of normality of life.
And what kind of stuff do you screen though? Is it recent films
we've
or
got
classics? Or?
So I don't know when this is going out, but we have yesterday we had
next week actually.
Okay,
yeah.
Well, yesterday we had Midway, which is the new
big
Roland
kind
Emmerich
war film
battle. Yeah. Tomorrow we have Terminator: Dark Fate.
Okay.
And this is very exciting. We have a very, very special screening this Saturday of Frozen 2. And that's going to be a really special one. Disney come along and help us with it. And there'll be lots of extra activities for the kids and everything. So that's really amazing. Disney are massively collaborative with our special screenings. We've had visits at times. When Toy Story 4 came out, we had the characters, Woody and Bo Peep, came to our cinema. The other Medicinema at St Thomas's Hospital, they had a visit from one of Woody's great friends, a guy called Tom Hanks.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
When we showed Avengers, it was the Infinity War. When we had Avengers Infinity War, Tom Hiddleston came along to our screening.
Brilliant.
For that. And, it's a great thrill for the kids to get to meet them. We had
amazing for them. Yeah,
we had a lovely screening just last week, actually. So we showed Judy, the Judy Garland film.
Yes.
And have you seen it?
I've not seen it yet.
Okay,
no.
well, in it, so obviously it's a true story.
Yeah.
And it's based around the last kind of few years of her life when she was based in London. But there's they fictionalized some characters in it who are kind of representative of how a kind of gay following for Judy Garland developed. So they've got these 2 gay guys who hang around at the stage door, and also within the film they meet her a few times, and they even take her out from, they take her home with them, they cook her a meal and everything. It's a fantastic element of the film because it's a really good way of, in a fictional sense, demonstrating a reality of what Judy Garland means as an icon. But it's just really moving as well. And one of the characters is played by Andy Nyman.
Oh, right, yeah, of course. And Ghost Story.
Yeah. And Andy Nyman, I bumped into him. I was having a chat with him. And I was talking about Medicinema and I said, do you want to come along? And he went, I'd love to. So Andy Nyman came along just the other week. I met the patients and was had photographs with them and pictures taken with them. And we did a Q&A about the film as well. And it was a really special event. It was a really lovely event. One of our patients who came down in a bed, Pippa, said she'll remember it for the rest of her life. And she was so thrilled to meet Andy. Andy was immensely, just perfect with the patients. He had a real sense of empathy.
He's very good at stuff like that. He comes to a bit of Fright Fest. Because obviously he's very into like horror films and stuff, and he often turns up there and he's very chatty to people and things.
Well, here's again, and it's not just with the patients. He's such a nice guy. one of our young volunteers, so we have a team of volunteers, and we had about 7 or 8 volunteers. One of our younger volunteers, Anton, was really pleased to meet him because just the night before he'd watched Ghost Stories.
Oh, yeah, great.
And he was really enjoying chatting to Andy about Ghost Stories. And it's coming back on in the West End, I believe.
It is, yeah.
And Andy just said to him, I'll get you some tickets.
Brilliant.
Now, you could say, well, okay, what happened next? You know, did that happen? And the thing is, Andy actually got in touch with me the other day and said, he emailed me and said, one of your younger volunteers, Anton, I promised I'd get him some tickets. Can you put me in contact with him? You know,
that's great because it's so easy
just lovely.
Just to forget and say that and just, you know.
He's put, if you take a look at Andy's Twitter feed, he has shared kind of photos from the day.
I've seen it, because I do follow him on Twitter. Yeah. That looks amazing. So so that's where you are now. Yep. So any kind of stuff that you kind of regret over any of the jobs that you've done that you think, oh, really?
Well, that's just some things. We started off any stuff I regret, and then any jobs I regret. I firstly kind of in general, I would imagine there's loads I regret. I've never been a particular follower of the I regret nothing. I don't see the point. I don't see the point in getting too wound up about your regrets because there's nothing you can do. But of course, there are regrets. Work-wise, this is one I'd forgotten about. I would most probably not have chosen to parade around the London Hippodrome in underwear with Trev for some awful job that we got when we first moved down to London, where I can't even remember what it was called now. It was some underwear company who decided. I think we'd done maybe 6 months or so of TV, so we were sort of vaguely known
of being,
and they wanted us to, in a comedy way, be like models parading underwear and then doing some comedy as well.
Yeah.
And then they'd have the proper thing. They were trying to launch this underwear range. But they were rubbish. It was at the Hippodrome, which is huge. They had these boxer shorts with just kind of tacky lettering stuck on. You know, they hadn't even got the proper stuff. It was awful. It was like embarrassing, and we had to try to then tell jokes, none of which worked. It was just not right for us. It was hideous, really. And
it doesn't sound very.
And also the thing being, it was relatively well paid, except I've not been paid for it to this day.
Really?
Yeah. So I regret
was that a Peter Stringfellow job? Because it wasn't he Hippodrome guy?
No, he'd have been more honourable than that, wouldn't he?
I don't know.
You're just trying to think of more people who've died on me.
Yes, it's true. Yeah.
So I'd regret that. Trevor most. If you ever speak to Trevor, he might remember more details about that. I've wiped it from my memory. So other than that, what can you do? You do these things. There've been other things that have not been jobs that have been great. Sometimes there'll be occasions where you take a job and you may need the money, you know. I've not done anything too dreadful. I mean, I possibly would regret being a bit more picky in my early years.
Yeah.
You know, so rather than regretting things I have done, I may regret things we chose not to do, because we were kind of quite, we would think of ourselves as kind of quite principled, I suppose. I don't know really what that means, but we would be, you know, we'd have attitudes to certain, say, commercials and so on. I remember a friend of ours who was on the stand-up circuit did one of the adverts when British Gas sold all the shares off, you know.
Lots of those.
And we wouldn't have done something like that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure what is gained through doing that, but I do think it's most probably good to have some principles. I remember with who's the American comedian another person who died quite young but who smoked, Bill.
Bill.
I'm older now.
Yes, he was very...
Bill, smoking Bill. What's his name?
Yeah, he did. He was. Bill somebody.
We've got to think of his name. You can edit all this out.
I'll edit all this out.
Bill. I have to go through the alphabet. That's the way you do this. You go through the alphabet and then it comes
He died of cancer.
Yeah.
And he's what we're going to do is
We've
while
got to
you're
find
thinking,
him. We've got to go to your phone.
Okay, Bill. Here we go. I'm going to Bill Hicks.
Bill Hicks.
It's weird.
Because he's half of my name as well, half my surname.
It's a weird thing. Is if you start going to Google, then that I didn't type anything in or search it. It's like that's when the name comes to you when you start.
So Bill Hicks,
search.
right?
Bill
Coming
Hicks.
to Bill Hicks.
Yeah.
Bill Hicks famously said, and a lot of comedians I know stuck very strongly to this. And he says, any comedian who goes and does an advert, I may be paraphrasing, any comedian who goes and does an advert loses the right to an opinion. And I always used to think, to be blunt, what a pile of shit.
Yeah.
And it always annoyed me a bit because it's, I understand in the broad strokes that there's some things you can do that don't fit with certain politics and so on and so forth. But for anyone to judge anyone else's choice of when sometimes it's just about making a living, there can be a myth that people in showbiz are loaded or rich or this or that.
But it's not really the case.
It's about we just have to get by sometimes.
Yeah.
And you have to do the job. And you do the job. And so I've never held with that. I think people should do what's best for them. I've only ever done one advert.
Which was that one?
I've done, and it's not. I'd have done others.
Yeah.
And it was always a case of some adverts are good adverts.
Yeah.
And the one me and Trev did was for a sweet called Fruitang. It was like they were like Chewits, but they had explosive bits in them.
I kind of remember that. Yeah.
Fruitang. Have you got the hang of it? That was the catchphrase. And we did it as World of the Strange. Our characters, we did these characters World of the Strange.
Yeah.
And because we collaborated with people who were doing it, it was a very enjoyable thing. But the other thing is, and this is why I don't have a regret at all, is firstly the adverts. There were two of them. They were moderately amusing. They were quite nice to do.
Yeah.
But also, I was paid. This was 1995. So what was I? I was 32, 33, and I was paid £10,000 for that advert.
Wow.
And I went and bought a Ford Fiesta. Now, prior to that, I'd never had a car. And prior to that, I didn't drive. I failed my test at 17. So what I did was, I firstly, I used the money to have driving lessons.
Yeah.
I passed my driving test at the age of, what did I say? I was, 33, 34.
33, yeah.
And I did this advert, and I just bought a Ford Fiesta that cost pretty much £10,000. It was a little sporty one. It was a 1.6 engine, It's nice. It's the only car I've ever had.
Yeah.
And it lasted me 16 years. So that advert was worth doing,
Definitely.
Uh-huh.
Fruitang. Are they still around? You still go?
No. I think they were. I was going to make some cheap joke about they were dangerous, but they weren't. No. No, they were. I liked them.
Sounds great.
You might be, if you look up Fruitang, which is like fruit with ANG on the end, you might well find the adverts on YouTube.
Probably can. It's amazing what you can find. There's quite a bit of Trevor and Simon stuff out on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, you did that fantastic compilation.
I did a little compilation, and I also found recently, just last year, this year, a copy of Trevor and Simon's stupid video.
Ah, wow.
And on VHS. And because I've got the leads to digitise it, that's on YouTube too.
Have you put it up?
Yeah.
Excellent. Great stuff.
Have you not seen it?
I don't think I've gone and what like,
it's
is it in bits or is
the
the
whole thing? The whole...
Yeah.
Because I remember getting a message from Trevor saying, "Oh, great, it's up, you
fantastic.
Can watch it." And he
right.
So the whole...
I will watch it.
You did two, didn't you? And I've only got one of them.
Yeah, all right.
But I think it's the first one. It's in a pink cover.
Yeah,
It's got World of the Strange on it, and
it's called Stupid Video.
Stupid Video.
Because we then kind of imaginatively, when we brought the second one out, we called it The Other Video.
Oh right, so it's definitely Stupid
like we
Video.
knew we were only ever going to bring two out. We did have a third one, but that's our live tour one.
Oh yes,
Trevor and Simon Blimey, That's Good tour.
Yeah,
1992.
Yeah, I think there's a clip on that montage of the guys at the piano.
Yes, that I don't regret that, but it does fill me with terror because I was going that year. I was going to go on holiday shortly after filming the tour. I was going to go on holiday to the Gambia, And I had to have masses of injections to go there. And one of the injections they give you is for, I think, malaria. And what they're meant to do is they give you a very small dose of malaria, and then that inoculates you.
Yeah.
And I got all these jabs done just before we filmed the live show. And I don't know the measurements, but let's suppose your doctor is meant to give you 0.05%.
Yeah.
The doctor went and gave me 0.5%. So I got 10 times the dose I was meant to get. And I was seriously ill. And I was in a dreadful, dreadful state when we filmed that. So, I used to, on stage, I was a dreadful sweater.
Okay, yeah.
Sadly, I never served in the Falklands,
Yeah, you didn't have the adrenaline overdose. Yeah.
God, imagine someone listening to this in about 2 years' time.
Yeah, people
what's he on about?
Next you'll mention, people.
So, yeah, I used to sweat like mad on stage, but it was worse. And when we were doing the Rogers Brothers in particular, with a big jacket on and the wig on and everything, I had sweat pouring off me. I'm amazed I got through it all, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, watch it on YouTube, folks.
Okay, yeah, it's up there. It's well worth watching. And just always to finish off, always nice to say, you got any kind of words of wisdom, looking back over all the things you've done, and also for people who want to start out and be on TV or comedy.
I should have thought more about this. To anyone starting out, well, firstly, let me start with a blunt. I have no wisdom whatsoever. Okay, so no, wisdom is not going to be something from me. I can tell you a few things I did or how I feel, and it may help. I do, and I'm pinching this from other people. Actually, I think it's me and Trev when we were starting out were meeting some old family friends, and my auntie Laura's husband Jack. This was my godmother. Her husband said to me and Trev, and he was a great character, Jack, and his, I'm pretty sure his son Paul will most probably end up listening to this. And his dad was a lovely guy, and he would, he'd say to me and Trev all sorts of things. But the one thing I remember, he went, what you need in this career, he goes, you need a job to fall back on.
The fallback job.
And he went. You want to get your heavy goods vehicle license. Now, he never did. And also, as much as Jack was a lovely guy, my advice to you is don't have a job to fall back on. David Mamet and his book, he's done a great book which is called On Acting, I think, and it's for actors, and it's really worth a read. He says you don't have anything to fall back on. If this is your job, this is your job. This is what you're going to do. If you have a job to fall back on, you'll fall back on it. So my key advice is, if you're sure about this, whatever this is, and this is what you want to do, then do it. And it may be very hard, and you may have to get other jobs, but they're not the same as having a job. Yeah, exactly.
They're filler jobs.
Yeah. And the other thing is, do things. And again, I can only speak for myself here, but I would like people to do things for the right reasons. If you're going into something thinking, oh, I'll be famous, well, what's all that about? That's not a thing in itself. Do it for the love of it. I would have loved to have been an actor as well. I loved acting, and I loved acting at school and then at university. But I don't think I would have ever. Comedy seemed the thing. Things have their own life.
Yeah.
They follow something will happen and it will seem right. But do something for the right reasons. Do it because it's the only thing you can do. Me and Trev did comedy because it was the only thing we could do at that time. I know I'm betraying the team now by saying, now I work in a cinema.
No, but you still do. But obviously you still love it, and that's the thing. And you keep
weirdly
true to
enough.
doing
And
something.
Trev's come along to a mega cinema and seen. He came to introduce our special screening of The Jerk. We sometimes show older films.
Oh, great!
And it was great having him along there. But the other thing I've realised is, even though a lot of my work is nurse rotas, volunteer rotas, going around the wards, liaising with everybody, doing all the technical stuff, at the end of each day, I put on a show. At the end of each day, people in that cinema, I do an introductory speech, and then they watch a film. And oddly enough, even though they're watching a film, I feel it's an extension of the business I'm in.
Yeah.
It's still a form of show business.
Yeah, it is. It really is. All right. Well, that's a great message to end on. And would you believe an hour and plus has flown by.
Oh, goodness. Chop it all out.
No, it's been great stuff.
Definitely chop out that bit about the kind of dog cartoon figure at the Colombian Embassy. No, that's dreadful.
No, that's definitely going in. It's the best bit. It's the best bit. Well, Simon Hickson, thank you ever so much for joining us on While I Was Resting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. It's been a pleasure.
While I Was Resting. Hello, it's Jace here. I hope you've been enjoying the podcast so far, and it'd be brilliant if you could give us a rating or review on iTunes, and of course, subscribe. I thank you all.